I recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell.
Mr. Secretary, unlike my colleague down the dais, I don't feel sorry for you. I visited with soldiers in war zones whose life is on the line, so a few tough questions. I think you'll be okay. And so my first question is, are you authorized to disclose intelligence that would put our troops in harm's way to our enemies?
Well, I reject the premise of the
Just saying,
question.
just as a hypothetical, are you authorized to do that?
I have not and do not.
Exactly, and I assume that. So when you told our ranking member that everything that you say is authorized, that wasn't completely accurate, correct?
What I said is that every way that I communicate is
No,
authorized.
you actually said everything that you said is authorized. I wrote it down. Now, with that said, and the reason I bring that up is because
it is shocking how incompetent these people are. It is shocking sometimes when you listen, when you sit and watch and listen to all these what's it called, congressional hearing or committee hearing, and you can, some of the answers that these people who are supposed to be the best people to work with Donald Trump, are they ever held accountable for what they say, the answers they give? Because I don't think they are. Because even if you don't know the subject at hand, but sometimes when you listen to the answers that they give, you begin to wonder, do they really know the job that they are doing? Yes, I would say they know the job. They have only one job to do, not for the American people. They have one job to do, and that job is to do whatever Donald J. Trump, their king, wants. Remember what Donald Trump said in his first term? He said, I picked people who were foolish, stupid, people who did not respect what I wanted, people who wanted to question everything that I wanted to do. And he said, the next time, it is going to be all about loyalty. That is why people who used to insult Donald Trump, but who can bow down, lick his ass, kiss the ring, and tell him that you are going to be the hail, hail, hail the king, he will forget about what you said and he will pick you. And there's proof. His vice president said before that he was America's Hitler. But he later on came, bow, kissed the ring, and said, whatever you say, whatever you want me to do, I will only say, yes, king. And that is what is basically happening. But these guys are, just watch this and then just let me know in the comment section what you think about these people. Are they the best people that America can offer? Really? Are they?
because it's about accountability. And we're talking about this war ethos. The primary component of that is accountability. And I'm going to indulge me in a quick analogy. Republicans introduced a bill on the House floor a few days ago, a resolution standing against terror, racism, hate, anti-Semitism, which as an American, as a black man, I'm going to stand against those things 6 times a week, twice on Sunday. Now, the nefarious part was there was a line that was stuck at the end of that resolution that essentially gave a shout out to law enforcement, which I do support, but also to ICE, which right now, a lot of Americans have a problem with the way ICE is being deployed. And I'm not happy with what they're doing, nor do I want to shout them out for that. And so accountability was, I didn't duck from the question. I went and I talked to my constituents. I went on social media. I did interviews to explain exactly where I stood, that I stand against hate. I stand against racism. I stand against anti-Semitism. And I hate that that line was stuck in there. That's accountability. So when we're asking you these questions and you're ducking and you're not answering them directly, that's not a culture of a war. What was the term? A war ethos, a warrior ethos. I'm looking at members who serve and they're taking their lead from you. That starts with you. And if we have troops who are in war zones and they're watching while they're risking their lives and you can't just answer some tough questions, what kind of culture is that setting? So as a prosecutor, when I think about what's happening in California and around the country with ICE, it's not only dangerous and unconstitutional, but it raises serious public safety concerns because we have people with masks that are going around saying that they're ICE, and we've had reports of that, saying that they're ICE and committing crimes. And that's a big problem. But it gets me back to the point of the accountability piece. So, for example, do you believe quality military housing is important? Yes or no? And just keep your mic on for time, because I don't only have a minute left.
Our budget commits to robust military housing and barracks up.
Do you believe military children deserve a strong education?
Our budget funds strong education, and we hope more educational choices for military.
Love it. Is it a priority to provide real, reliable care to our veterans?
Of course.
So, Mr. Secretary, we have a problem here because your answers don't match your budget priorities. You said your mission is to restore this warrior ethos and that threats we face are serious, but so must our investments. So when we think of, for example, a $45 million parade, I can think of 45 million things we could do more effectively with $45 million than a parade, such as the things that I mentioned: military housing, military children's education, providing reliable care for our veterans. All of these things would be higher on the priority than a parade. And so the parade, and when we talk about showing strength, we're not talking about theater. We're not talking about showmanship. We're talking about things that actually make our military more lethal and keeps us safer. And so what I'm saying is that in my limited time left is accountability does matter, and this body cares about what our military is doing because we care about national security, and we all take it very seriously.
Gentleman's time has expired. Time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to our witnesses for being here today. We have one really important thing in common. We all swore an oath to this great document, the United States Constitution. We swore that oath when we joined the military, and we swore that oath when we began the jobs that we're holding now. And I want to begin at the beginning of this document and at the beginning of your testimony, Mr. Hegseth. In the first sentence of your testimony, you said you're here today to testify about the fiscal year 2026 budget for the Department of Defense. You're required under law to submit this budget to the Congress because we've got the power of the purse after all, by no later than the first Monday in February. Here we are in the second Thursday in June. We don't have your budget, as the chairman, the ranking member, and many of my colleagues on this committee have pointed out. You have testified that you want to be accountable for every dollar, every taxpayer dollar, and where it goes. We can't do our job without your budget. When can we expect your budget, Mr. Hegseth?
Well, as I also acknowledged in my opening remarks, in the first year of an administration, it does take more
Mr.
time,
Hegseth, please
especially while
reclaiming
you're
my
addressing
time.
the priorities of the previous administration.
When can we expect your budget?
You have details of it already, and you will have it very soon.
Can we expect the budget before the end of the month?
I would refer to Bryn, who's working that, but I know there are a great deal of detail that is already with the committee.
Okay, let the record reflect that you haven't given us a commitment, but you're required by law to do so. You're also required by law to pass an audit. That's been true since the 1990s. The Department of Defense is the only department that has continually failed an audit. You've committed to passing an audit in 2028, but we expect you to pass an audit this year and hope you will work with us to achieve that goal. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you for your testimony and what you've said about the threats that we face as the United States, threats from China, Russia, and Iran, and I want to ask briefly questions about each. Mr. Chairman, you've said that the Chinese Communist Party is advancing an unprecedented military modernization effort with cutting-edge technologies, including artificial intelligence. Do you agree that the United States military must have more powerful AI capabilities than China?
Well, ma'am, first, thank you also for your service in the Navy. I think LLMs and AI really underpinning all of our command and control capabilities is now and will be in the future a key and essential tool for decision making.
Thank you. I agree that American AI dominance is extremely important. Mr. Hegseth, should American AI dominance be up for negotiation with China in any trade talks that are underway?
As the chairman said, we're very focused on AI dominance. It's central to maintaining our cutting edge, and we're doing that.
Good. Well, I hope, will you commit to telling the president not to sacrifice American AI dominance in any of his negotiations with the Chinese?
The president is not surrendering any of our dominance to the Chinese.
Good. I'll take that as a yes, that you'll be advocating for that. Thank you very much. I hope you'll also, you've both spoken to the importance of competition in the defense industrial base. I agree with that deeply. I'd point out that 40% of small businesses have left our defense industrial base supply chain in the past decade, and trade wars that have caused unprecedented uncertainty are going to drive more small businesses out of business. And that's something I hope we can work together to try to prevent, because it's very real in my home state of New Hampshire. Mr. Hegseth, did you order a pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia?
That I know the story you're referring to, and it's false. We said it then, and I'll say it now.
So it is your testimony that you never ordered a pause in offensive cyber operations against Russia?
We did not.
Okay, let the record reflect that, and we'll be following up on that. I'm going to skip around because there's been a lot said in this hearing that has given me grave concern. One of the things that's been said in this hearing, Mr. Hegseth, was I want to give you the opportunity to correct the record and make clear that you will abide by, that you will obey a ruling of the United States Supreme Court.
I don't believe we have any cases pending before the Supreme Court right now.
I want to ask you, will you abide by a ruling, by a decision of the United States Supreme Court if it is issued and you're asked to do so?
What I've said, and I'll repeat, is that district courts should not set the policy of foreign policy of the United States of America.
Mr. Hegseth, this is a fundamental principle of the United States Constitution.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Mexico, Mr. Vasquez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I understand that the border is a top priority for you and the Department of Defense. Well, it's also one of my top priorities in my border district. That's why I've introduced bipartisan legislation to stop fentanyl at the border, secure our ports of entry, hire more CBP personnel, and combat the cartels, areas that I'm sure we agree on. Now, DOD has spent more than $525 million from the defense budget on military operations on the border. You've done it by diverting over $1 billion from military modernization and quality of life programs like housing. And as such, I'm sure you're well informed as to what your warfighters are doing on our border and the characteristics of the border itself. Secretary Hegseth, do you know how many border miles there are in New Mexico?
Not the exact number of miles.
Can you give me a round figure?
Hundreds.
Okay, 180 miles. Can you tell me where the border wall starts and ends on this map of New Mexico?
I'm not properly oriented to your map, but I know that unfortunately, because of the administration previous, they did not have the opportunity to finish the border wall.
Thank you,
let it rust
Secretary.
on the ground instead of
Thank you,
putting it up,
Secretary. And you have been to
defending
New
our border.
Mexico. Could you tell me where in New Mexico you've been to?
I've been to the border twice to look at once at our national defense area down there because I can't recall a time when a Secretary of Defense has gone down in the first 4 or 5 months of his tenure to the border to better understand.
Was that in
the
an urban
situation
area
there.
or in a rural area?
Both areas, traversed rural areas and urban.
Okay, so you must be
some
familiar-
with walls, some without.
Secretary.
And if President Trump was actually supported, we'd have a
Thank you,
border wall.
Secretary. I reclaim my time. So the most remote part of New Mexico is called the Boot Heel. And I'm not sure that you spent any time in the Boot Heel of New Mexico. Mr. Secretary, I was raised on the border. I've lived there my whole life. I've worked alongside ranchers, farmers, landowners, wildlife biologists, and other stakeholders for over a decade. I headed a border security task force in my district before coming to Congress. I've traveled with Border Patrol on ATVs. I've hunted the border on horseback and hiked dozens of miles in the most remote stretches of the border in this region. Now, do you happen to know why there hasn't been a border wall built in the Boot Heel?
Well, based on what you just described, you should be a big fan of what our administration is
Well,
undertaking.
Secretary, I'm asking why a border wall has not been built. Funds have been allocated for other parts of the border. but
Here's
not
what I
here.
know. Our commanders on the ground and others and our engineers would understand what goes where and why, and where there should be a border wall, there will be a border wall.
Okay,
It will be
Secretary-
funded through reconciliation. because
Secretary, are you
President Trump
familiar with the
is gonna
Animas
deliver
Mountains,
on it.
with Alamo Hueco, with San Luis Mountains, with Guadalupe Pass or Long Canyon?
Again,
Critical border areas.
I'm aware that there are gaps in different places where walls are not as effective as other places, and I get that.
Thank
We're
you,
applying
Secretary. I
infrastructure
appreciate your
where
answer
it
on that.
makes the most sense, because
Thank
we're
you.
going to get 100% operational
Thank you,
control of the border.
Secretary. So you agree then that a border wall doesn't make sense for the entire country?
I think we need a border wall across our entire border.
Okay, so you should know then why it's almost physically impossible to build a border across the Animas Mountains and the terrain challenges that that poses and the billions of dollars. Do you know if there's roads on those mountains currently?
If we're going to spend money as a government,
Okay.
it should be
I'll take that as a no.
secure our southern
Well,
border.
the point I'm trying to make, Secretary, is that if this is so important to the military, and you as Secretary of the Department of Defense should know more about the border. Mr. Secretary, I urge you to skip the photo ops next time that you go to a port of entry and spend time on the ground in places like the Diamond Day Ranch.
I think you should ask the soldiers on the border whether they've been photo op visits or not, because I spent a lot
Secretary-
of time on the ground
Secretary,
with
are
the
you-
soldiers, getting an understanding of what
Secretary,
they're
I'm
facing,
gonna
what
ask
they're
you a
doing,
question
what
that-
their capabilities
Secretary,
are.
I reclaim
not
my
for a
time.
photo op.
Thank you.
As a
Secretary, I
Secretary of
reclaim my
Defense, to
time.
understand what our
Chairman,
troops
may I
do
reclaim my
and
time?
why.
Gentleman
they
reclaims
do it.
his time.
Thank you. Secretary, do you know what a tethered aerostat system is?
I do.
Okay. Well, great. Then you know that this type of surveillance technology is superior to having thousands of troops sitting in trucks looking at an empty desert. I've requested funds for more tethered aerostat systems. We haven't had a response from your department. Are you familiar with ASTs?
What's an AST?
Well, it's an autonomous surveillance tower. They're equipped with these advanced cameras that have the capability to relay critical information to border agents on the ground. And this type of technology is badly needed on the boot heel. And it's a much better expenditure than a border wall is.
I've
That's
seen that.
impossible.
I've seen those towers in use.
Great. Well, these technologies have been described to me by both Border Patrol and CBP as force multipliers, allowing their personnel to focus on law enforcement efforts while leaving this mundane surveillance